Well, like the guy said, you lose your head, your ass goes with it. But I heard him. See, if I missed him in the 12th round, I heard him in the 12th round, and guys in the corner said, just keep boxing him. Don't try to punch him. He said, I'm going to go out and fix his head. And I went out, and Joe Louis fixed me.
And I think Billy tells the story of how he was the heavyweight champion for the shortest period in history, 12 rounds.
Like Joe Louis said, see, I said to him one time, I says, boy, I got a bad break with you. I said, I could have won the championship, went around the corner, tell all the guys I'm a heavyweight champion, and let you win it back in 6 months. He looked at me, he says, you had it for 12 rounds, you couldn't keep it. How the hell were you going to keep it for 6 months?
Probably the most significant thing that my father did in terms of truly transforming from being a black professional boxer to an American hero was when he volunteered for the Army. I mean, he just defeated Max, and he carried that even further, putting up his title and with the purses going to the Army and Navy relief funds. Had he lost that title, he would have lost everything. I mean, he would have had to come back and become a challenger, and the purses wouldn't have been so great. So unlike many other people who contributed to the war effort, my father gave all that he had, and that was the heavyweight championship of the world title. And had he lost it in those purses, he would have been probably not very well off.
The time he spent in the Army, he traveled 70,000 miles, fought in 96 exhibitions, had some bouts in which he donated the entire proceeds to the Navy Relief Fund, which at the time was the most racist of the 3 divisions of the armed forces. And then later, when he was told about the problems in the Navy, he devoted or donated all the proceeds of a fight to the Army Relief Fund. And he traveled 70,000 miles, gave 96 exhibitions, did everything the Army wanted to be a good soldier, yet came out of the Army as a fighter, still almost broke. And from that point on, he was literally always in tax trouble.
My father won the Legion of Merit, and I think that was just a way of the country saying what a hero and the kind of contributions that he had made.
So I am grateful. I consider this honor.
While his impact grew, so did his troubles. Age, debt, mental problems, and Rocky Marciano. Next.
The heavyweight, a champion for the world. Heavyweight boxing history. Joe Louis, the fighter with an atom bomb in each fist, retires undefeated just shy of his 35th birthday.
Joe Louis retired in 1949 after the Walcott fight, many of which said Walcott won. And in fact, Joe went over to Walcott after the fight and said, sorry, Joe. Joe Louis also thought he had lost. But Louis retired undefeated as a heavyweight champion.
I defended my championship 25 times. I think I've been told to retire now.
But he was still in such deep tax trouble that he had to come back, unretire, and fight again. He had a loss to Ezra Charles, and he had a loss to Rocky Marciano.
The Rocky Marciano fight was probably one of the most saddest of occasions in my father's history. He had to come back and fight Rocky because of the tax situation. They basically were hounding him. The Internal Revenue Service wouldn't let him work. Whenever he did work, they basically were trying to impound his checks. And so he needed, and they wouldn't relax that debt, which is a very sore subject in our family in the sense that they didn't give him credit for the purses that he donated in the Army Navy relief funds. And so there was a real discussion as to whether or not he really couldn't have gotten, and they couldn't have worked with him on those tax debts.
Joe was too old, see. You can't fight when you're old. That's for young guys.
The New York Times, October 27, 1951. The moment everyone had been dreading finally arrived last night. Age and Rocky Marciano had simultaneously caught up with the old champion. In the 7th, he had Marciano pinned to a corner. The Louis of old would have finished him with a punch, but the old Louis let him escape. Marciano dropped Louis for a count of 8 before he sent him through the ropes with a right to the jaw. I'm not disappointed, Joe said. I did the best I could, but I just didn't have it. The better man won.
Joe, still being in tax trouble, was used to doing things that would return a six-figure sums for a short period of time of work. And he turned to doing whatever he could do with his hands. And I guess wrestling was the next best thing. And for a while, Joe Louis, the former undefeated heavyweight champion, after his first retirement, was a professional wrestler.
That was a mistake, you know. He shouldn't have gone into it, but like everybody else, I guess Joe thought that he could make some money out of it. But Joe really never lowered himself to the fact that he had to go out and do things to earn money. Joe always had a bunch of guys around him that loved him and would always give him money. Didn't matter.
My father just felt that the wrestling matches that he went into, the exhibitions that he went into, were not real happy times. But Joe Louis was able to overcome any particular problem, any particular difficulty. Even though he had difficulties in his life, the country sort of overlooked him. I guess that was the hero quality.
Many years ago, Joe Louis moved to Las Vegas. He loved to play golf here. He used to hang around this hotel all the time. He had a lot of friends here. And Joe was one of those very, very special individuals.
Oh, yeah. They treated him real good. Ash Wrestling was one of the partners, and Ash was a great friend of Joe's.
At Caesar's Palace, he would be there, and people would come to see him. He was sort of like a representative of the hotel, and usually he would just be around. It was like, to me, a national monument.
Till the time that Joe became sick, which was in the middle 70s, he related to people real great. He never turned anybody down for an autograph. Was just as kind as could be to anybody that came over him. Always gave interviews. Took care of every busted guy that was around. And that was Joe.
The problems my father had were some paranoia and people feeling that people were trying to kill him or destroy him.
Joe Louis was one of those people, one of those Americans, black, white, or whatever ethnic group, whose image was not diminished due to the unfortunate circumstances after his career.
He would detach phones because he thought phones were being tapped, and strip beds because he thought things were being placed in beds. So there was a lot of not very normal actions.
He was still given the biggest hand wherever he went. He was still idolized. People still wanted to, and this phrase is used by a lot of people who think of Joe Louis, who were quoted as saying, "I just want to touch the hem of his garment." He was held in that high esteem by quite a few people.
My father was a very important individual to America and the world. And because of that, they sort of continued to see him as a hero. They never sort of took him off his pedestal. I like to say that my father tripped, but America would never let him stumble. And the reason that is because he was a hero.
Well, there are many things about Joe. I know he had a good heart, big heart. He was a real man. I know many fighters and know many people. They are nice too, and you can be a friend too, but to Joe Louis, you could be a good friend.
And you'd walk up to Joe Louis, he'd never seen you before. And he'd make you feel like you've known him for 15 years. It's that kind of warmth and grace that my father was able to give people. Champ, you know, I was in the service with you in Kansas. Well, yeah, I remember that. Did he remember it? Probably not. But he made that fellow's life. He didn't make his day.
In the research for my book, which will be out this fall, the fall of 1987, Joe Louis unequivocally and undoubtedly emerges as the first universally loved black American athlete.
The book that I'm writing on my father has the goal of trying to truly document the impact that he had on so many lives, black or white, rich or poor. A lot of people have said that my father was probably the most important individual and black individual in our history because he allowed for white America to view him as an American and not just a black American.
I guess the whole world knows about Joe Louis. He'll never be forgotten.
Youth Button, a rare family portrait, leather binding, and lavish end papers make this a collector's item. Priced at only $30, we're certain they won't be around for the final bell. This book is not available in stores, so order your copy now by calling toll-free 1-800-453-7000. And brought to you by Bud Light. Everything else is just a light. And by McGraw-Hill, publisher of Joe Louis, 50 Years an American Hero, a compelling new biography.
You had the strength to set it right. Fighting your way up was never easy. Under bright lights in the heat of the night. Holding up the world was never easy. But your fist brought the biggest lies to light. Knew what was deep inside. They could run, but they couldn't hide. Not from the heavyweight, the champion of the world. Up from the ashes like the phoenix, a million dreams riding on your every move. You fought like you were driven by a demon, but you won like you were not afraid to lose. You had no other choice, as the crowd spoke one voice, said you're the heavyweight, the champion of the world.